I would investigate. Yeah. Then probably then we could integrate. Yeah. Keep your eyes on the prize.
In America in 1963, it was a whole different world. Things that were being done, the bombings in Birmingham, people getting hung and everything else, was a way of life for me. Some people would might get upset for a minute and then they'd forget about it. A lot of people in this country were saying, well, you know, as long as it's happening to them, we're not going to even worry about it.
Racism was so embedded in the country and so embedded in politics, and people were comfortable. And so there was really no catalyst to change anything if things are going well for you from your perspective.
I remember Proctor Pool, swimming pool in Peoria, and we couldn't go down there and swim. We couldn't go over and swim at Glen Oak Park Pool. The children could swim during the week, but we got to swim on Saturday, and then they would drain the pool. They'd drain the pool Sunday, and then it would start all over again. We couldn't swim from Monday through Friday.
I went to the service and served 2 years, joined the draft. Very proud. I was one proud person. Had my little uniform on and standing tall, and came back to Peoria, couldn't even eat in the restaurant. That's when I joined the NAACP, because I said, now I'm going to fight for my country, and I can't eat in a restaurant. We had a little box in Peoria where black folks lived, and we had doctors, we had lawyers.
But I came from Memphis, where it was totally segregated, because I was in a school system that was all black. The neighborhood was all black. Church was all black. The movie theater, you could go to the movie. You sat in the balcony. You went to the Dairy Queen. There was a separate window. So that was the environment I had grown up in, and I really didn't think, anything was wrong, because that's just the way I had been brought up. When I came to Peoria and got exposed to the movement that was here, it kind of opened my eyes.
Well, you could tell it wasn't equal. I mean, it wasn't, things were just not what they should be, but no one said, very little was ever talked about it. My brother and I used to talk about it, and our folks would talk about it, but most people just, I guess they had the attitude, it's not near us yet, so we'll worry about it when it gets here. But there wasn't very little said.
We grew up having an African-American maid who came to our house, not being conscious of the fact that we were paying them very little, partly because we didn't have the money to pay more, but partly because that was the way it was.
In the fall of 1962, I was a student at the University of Mississippi at Ole Miss. I'd grown up in the most southern place on earth, which was the Delta of Mississippi, in particular the town of Greenville. And my credentials were absolutely impeccable as a white Southern gentleman. The South at that time, Mississippi in particular, was totally segregated. There was no integration whatsoever on any levels. It was completely locked down. I didn't like that, and I didn't think it was right, and I didn't think it was going to last. And more importantly, I felt like a lot of other people felt the same way that I did.
Freedom Now movement, hear me. We are requesting all citizens to move into Washington, to go by plane, by car, bus, any way that you can get there. Walk if necessary. We are pushing for jobs, housing, desegregated schools. This is an urgent request. Please join. Go to Washington.
Negroes want the same things that white citizens possess. All of their rights. They want no reservations. They want complete equality, social, economic, and political. And no force under the sun can stem and block and stop this civil rights revolution which is now underway.
We left from Mount Zion Baptist Church. We were greeted by, different people, well-wishers and things like that. And, my mom didn't go, but she was down there with my dad so they could say goodbye. Different people were crying.
To me, it was a real big deal. That was my first plane ride in '63. But the most overwhelming thing about it was I was going to the march.
There were 3 buses, and we had to leave very early in the morning. We were going from New York to Washington, D.C., so it was dark when we left.
Buses left out of Boston at about 11 o'clock in the evening.
It was hot on the bus. There was no air conditioning. So you can imagine that many people on the bus with no air conditioning.
We realized shortly after we were on our way that there were other buses and cars on their way to Washington, D.C. And that was kind of exciting right there. You suddenly realized that there were a lot of people going to this thing.
I remember we were the second bus. It was dark when we got there. And then all these buses started coming in and these people.
As far as you can see, everywhere are people. And they're all walking down the avenues, the different roads and so forth inside of D.C.
I could see all the crowds. This was, just amazing. And people starting to come in and everybody shaking hands. You're shaking hands with people you've never seen in your life.
I knew it was more than 100,000 after a while. I mean, they projected 100,000, but it was 200,000 at least.
We had white Americans join that march and was in that march. Some were clergy, and then, others people just because they want to go.
Believe it or not, there are probably close to, I want to say 25% white people over there. And I think they were there because they were interested and concerned and wanted to know what was going on and, maybe be able to help down the road.
Just to get face to face with that many people that had the same mindset that you had and had the same dreams that you had was overwhelming.
Even though you forget things in 50 years, you don't forget some things. And one was that view of all these people who had come together and we were all colors, and that was good.
They had quite a few speakers before him, but I can't remember any of them. The only thing I remember is Martin Luther King's speech.
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
That speech, and the more and more I hear it, when they had the excerpts and seeing them, knowing that I was some first ones up there, and how close I was, it's just just runs chills, really. I'm gonna be honest.
If there was anything in my brain or my chemistry that has stuck with me since I was a young man, it's that speech. I felt like I was listening to him all by myself. He spoke so strongly to the people that had similar experiences as far as being American at that time, that I almost felt like I was by myself. He was talking directly to me.
Dr. King walked up to the microphone and everybody clapped. And he started out, it was maybe 50% of who he was. I'm told now that Mahalia Jackson, who was over there, she was on stage, and she said, Dr. King, preach.
Every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together.
He was letting the Spirit of God take over. And I'm telling you, it was just, I mean, the change, it wasn't anything real abrupt, but he just moved right into it. And it was like the Spirit of God was speaking. I saw grown men crying. I saw women just screaming and crying. And I mean, men, I had never seen from Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas. I saw those men crying. I saw our leader, Mr. Gwynn, tears coming, just streaming down their face. There were grown men who weren't afraid to cry.
We'll be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
I love that man.
And then they killed him. They killed Kennedy, Medgar Evers, King, people that was for equal rights. Assassinate them. Name me one person that the bad guy that's been assassinated. These are things that, and you hear that speech and you go line by line to the extent. How could you treat people like that? And this is not right. Some of the pictures you see of and the lynchings. Every third day they was lynching somebody, hanging them, tarring and feathering. How could you treat a human being like that? Sure, I'm angry. Yeah, I'm angry. But all I can do is cry or try to do things the right way. Because if I go out and kill somebody, that's not right. That's the same thing I'm criticizing. If I go and because you're white and I'm going to do something, that's wrong. Because I don't want you to treat you the way I want to be treated. It's just that simple.
They used to ask the question, when will you be satisfied? And no, I'm not satisfied. I see some things have happen and things have changed, but no, I'm definitely not satisfied.
I'm saddened by the fact that a lot of things that were going on back then are still going on now.
You think everything's okay, and you find out that some people are doing the same things. They're just doing it differently.
I guess at the end part of the speech, I have a dream, we're children and so forth, all those things. That didn't happen, did it? It didn't happen at all. I don't think that black children and white children at this point, or even adults for that matter, get along that well. I think there's a lot of suspicion and change in very different views of the world because people are ensconced back in these communities, as opposed to being kind of know each other.
When I hear, states' rights, let's take our country back. Let's take it back the way things used to be and this and that. And no, we can't take them back the way things used to be because the way they were wrong. So, no, and that's why I say I have immediately, if I'm watching the media, I'm watching television, and people start ramping, states' rights, let's, go back the way we were. I know immediately what's up.
I think we still have areas out there, people haven't changed their feelings on either Martin Luther King or the colored people themselves, and I think that's truly tragic.
I think we all hope that this dream continues. I mean, we certainly haven't accomplished what he hoped we would. And we've got to work on it continually.
I think that we should get discouraged, even though sometimes you may have those moments where you think things haven't changed, but then you realize that you have a greater voice now than you ever did. So then that's encouraging.
This has to be something that has to be in the hearts of men, to love each other, treat each other equally.
A lot of things have happened since then. We have a black president, That's something that I never even, never even hoped for, because I just thought it was, something that was not achievable in this country.
Don't get complacent and think that you made it. There's still work to be done, because there's other people, to interact with. There's other people to bring into the fold, and there's other people to, to get to be in this march toward, true equality, so that you can say, free at last, free at last. And I don't think we've gotten to that spot yet. I don't think we're at that place yet. But I think as long as we keep moving toward that, it will happen.